From the heart of Nebraska's capital city, this is the Nebraska Family Alliance Report. Here's your host, Nate Graz.
Big updates from the Nebraska Capitol. As this year's legislative session is underway and major debates are happening, we'll share the latest on what you need to know about the most important bills impacting faith, family, and freedom in Nebraska. I'm Nate Graz, Executive Director for Nebraska Family Alliance, and the 2026 legislative session is in full swing. The NFA team is at the state capitol every day defending your family and freedom and working to protect life and liberty in Nebraska. And there's some great opportunities as well as some great threats. And we have reviewed all of the hundreds of bills and amendments that have been introduced from the first 10 days of session. We've been testifying, including on several really big bills recently that we'll share more about. And we have a great resource now available on our website, the NFA Bill Tracker, which you can access at nebraskafamilyalliance.org to help equip you and your family on the issues that matter most. We know how confusing it can be sometimes when you look at some of these bills, and no one really seems to know what it's doing, but we dive into the weeds. We provide an easy snapshot of what the bill would actually do in words that people can actually understand. And we give a link where you can read the bill, where you can track its progress. We provide a status update on where it's at in the legislative process. And importantly, we also provide information on how you can contact your state senator to let them know the bills that you support and oppose. And we believe firmly that engaging in the legislative process is an opportunity. It's an opportunity to both honor God and to love our neighbors well. And we all have a role to play. And together we can help advance family, freedom, and life at our state capitol. That's what we're committed to doing. And for 10 consecutive years, we have blocked every NFA-opposed bill from becoming law, as well as advancing several key proposals to advance a culture of life and protect children in our state. And so we've made some tremendous progress, but still have a lot of work to do. And that work is continuing to unfold this year at our state capitol. And recently, our team was there to testify on a number of bills that were heard in committee recently, including a bill that was dealing with abortion and trying to allow minors in Nebraska to be able to obtain abortions without parental notification or parental consent, as well as several bills to protect women and girls and defeat gender ideology. And these are really important bills. So this is 730, LB 730, LB 731, and LB 732 that were all introduced by State Senator Kathleen Kauth. And we got to talk to her earlier this year where she shared that she would be bringing these bills, and they are now real bills in the legislature, and they all had committee hearings recently. And specifically, LB 730 is all about protecting girls' locker rooms and restrooms. Girls should never be forced to share private spaces with a man. And we know that has happened and continues to happen. And LB 730 very simply says that all public schools, colleges, any state facility has to designate restrooms and locker rooms according to biological sex and not gender identity. And if that sounds common sense, that's because it is. We know, and we've always known, that locker rooms and bathrooms are private spaces that girls should not be forced to share with men. And one of the responsibilities of schools is to provide a safe environment where children can learn and thrive. And LB 730 would help ensure that happens for students in Nebraska. Obviously, protecting sex-specific spaces is important for safety reasons, but it's also about fundamentally truth and whether or not there are two sexes or a man can say that they're a woman and therefore they are a woman and vice versa. And so this was about affirming the truth about gender in the law and about protecting women and girls' spaces in Nebraska, because our laws and policies should recognize and reflect truth, and they should recognize and respect that males and females are biologically different. And respecting those differences is essential to ensuring the privacy, dignity, and safety of both sexes. And that's why this bill, LB 730, is grounded in biological reality, and it takes a common sense approach to protecting the privacy of students and citizens in restrooms and locker rooms. And being at the Capitol for the committee hearing on this bill, I mean, it feels almost like stepping into an alternate universe sometimes. And thankfully, there was some really great testimony from doctors, from professors, from experts in their field who testified to the facts about the biological differences between males and females and why there should be separate spaces, particularly in schools like bathrooms and locker rooms. And there was even testimony from a father of a student, a high school student in Nebraska who was in a public high school, and that school was allowing a boy to use the girls' locker room and bathrooms. And unsurprisingly, that created a lot of awkwardness and tension in that school. And when the family spoke out against it and asked the administration to do something about it and to not allow boys and girls spaces, the school's response was to say that the female student who felt uncomfortable with a boy being in the girl's space, that the girl should leave that space. The girl should leave the girls' restroom, not use the girls' restroom and locker rooms if she feels uncomfortable, rather than actually ensuring that those girls' locker rooms and bathrooms are for girls and not letting boys in. The response was, if girls don't like it, if they're not comfortable with it, the girls can leave. That's what had been happening. Then that family ended up having to just pull their student, out of that high school because no action was taken. And so that's why this bill is needed. And yet there continued to be, opposition from activists and advocacy groups. And of course, when some senators on the committee asked some of the testifiers who were there to oppose the bill what a woman is, they really struggled to come up with an answer for that question. And when asked if any guys should just be allowed in women's restrooms and locker rooms, they said no, but then still continued to oppose this bill. And so while this is common sense, it is absolutely critical that senators hear from you, that you reach out and contact senators in support of this bill. They're getting a ton of opposition from groups and activists trying to prevent this bill. And you might remember that, we've talked about this before. And just last year, our legislature passed LB 89, the Stand With Women Act, to protect girls' sports. And that bill originally also had protections for locker rooms and bathrooms. But in order for that bill to pass last year, in order to get the necessary votes, the protections for bathrooms and locker rooms had to get taken out. And so that's why we are back this year with LB 730, and it is past time that this gets done in the state of Nebraska, and we're doing everything that we can to protect women and girls in our state and affirm the truth about gender within our laws. So that's a really important bill that we're going to be continuing to work in favor of and hope to see advance this year. And we also testified recently on LB 731, which is the Gender Transition Malpractice Accountability Act. And this bill is all about ensuring patients who have undergone irreversible gender-altering procedures, oftentimes as minors, are given the support that they need and that they actually have legal recourse to hold people accountable who performed those surgeries and procedures on them. And so this is something that, again, the further this issue goes on as time passes, we're continuing to have more people who have detransitioned, who were pushed towards trying to change their gender and then came to realize that that was not helpful, that was not the right decision for them. And they underwent tremendous harm in the name of gender-affirming care. And so this bill prioritizes patient well-being over ideology. It reinforces ethical standards in medical practice and accountability for long-term care that people are being subjected to. And it extends the statute of limitations so that victims can pursue legal action because many vulnerable patients, especially minors, cannot and did not fully understand the long-term risks of what was being done to them in the name of gender-affirming care. And similarly, the next bill we want to highlight, LB 732, would fully prohibit gender transition drugs for children. Children who are struggling to embrace their biological sex need compassionate care and time. What they don't need is experimental drugs trying to change their gender, which is biologically impossible. And so this bill would fully prohibit any puberty blockers or cross-sex hormones from being prescribed to children with the intent or purpose of trying to alter their gender. Children cannot consent to lifelong consequences. That's why children can't buy alcohol or sign contracts or get tattoos. And yet today we're being told that a child can consent to medical interventions that might permanently alter their body, their fertility, and their future. And so this bill, LB 732, it's not about denying care. It's about denying the lie that children are born in the wrong body and that they have to be medically altered in order to be made whole. Sex is a biological reality written into every cell of the human body. We know that hormones can alter appearance, but they cannot change biological sex, and attempting to do so in children carries serious and often irreversible consequences. And the research on this is now abundantly clear. The vast, overwhelming majority of children who experience gender-related distress will resolve that distress naturally if they are given time and not medically intervened on. And that's why we're starting to see entire countries imposing severe restrictions and outright prohibitions on gender-altering drugs for minors, including countries that were some of the earliest adopters of these practices, like Sweden, Finland, and the United Kingdom. Again, this is about ensuring that our laws are following biology and not ideology. And they should also follow the first principle of medicine, do no harm. And we want to make sure that kids in Nebraska are receiving help and not harm, and that our legislators are helping to preserve every child's future choices. So those are three really big bills, and when our laws reflect biological reality, when they protect safety and prioritize the well-being of children, families and communities thrive. And the last bill we wanted to highlight today, as I mentioned earlier, a pro-abortion bill that we testified against, LB 1161, seeking to allow teenagers in Nebraska to receive abortions without parental notification or consent. We know that abortion ends an innocent human life, leaving lasting impacts on families. And this bill, 1161, would seek to change the age of majority for minors who are pregnant in Nebraska so that they would not need any parental consent for any healthcare decisions that they might want to make. This bill would cut parents out entirely of critical moments when their guidance, care, and protection are most needed. And it would expose underage girls in Nebraska to potential coercion, abuse, and exploitation by isolating them from their families and leaving them in the hands of the abortion industry. Parents are the primary protectors of their children, and LB 1161 is seeking to advance a pro-abortion, ideologically driven agenda that preys on vulnerable young women in crisis for a profit. And that's why we're standing up to oppose it, because our state's values are rooted in family and caring for the vulnerable. And with your help, our state can continue to lead the way in how we protect preborn children and their mothers, how we strengthen families and parental rights, and foster a culture that values every human life. For more information on these bills and all the bills we're working on this year, please visit our bill tracker at nebraskafamilyalliance.org. And together, we can make a difference for life, for families, and for truth in Nebraska.